we have probably the same problem in Zambia. We have intermarried and we think everything is gone, but that's not the case. He gives an example of Yugoslavia, he gives an example of Rwanda. When this thing is not tackled head on, it becomes a problem. We have had a situation in Zambia State Council of dismissals in national interest. What has been your opinion on that?
Well, we've had people being dismissed. We've had instances of people I worked with under President Michael Sata, who I considered top-notch civil servants.
Right.
Extremely capable at PS level, and they have been dismissed. A couple of other people have been dismissed, and if truth be told, most of the ones I know who I worked with who have been dismissed were from the Southern Province. Yeah, and we must be candid and say it as it is.
Exactly.
That is what is happening. I am not from the Southern Province myself. I have one leg in Lusaka, another in Eastern Province. But at the end of the day, these are hard truths that we should talk about, because Zambia is bigger than all of us. And we can only be happy, I can only be happy if we are all happy. You know, our collective happiness in this nation is important for my happiness. And I think that is how we have always lived as Africans. That is, in fact, how our founding fathers of this nation that we have now have cultivated us. And that's why the deliberate slogan of One Zambia, One Nation was coined, because
yes,
we had that, we had problems in the past of, if you know our history, there were similar problems that came up when there were struggles for power within UNIP in the late 60s, early 70s. But this One Zambia, One Nation slogan, I think is as relevant today as it was in the 60s and 70s. We are one Zambia, we are one nation. And I think what we must not promote is any leader from any section, whether it's our national leaders or political leaders at any level, to divide us as a people.
In the same vein, State Council government appointments, to your credit again, we are sent basically today. If you look at what is happening in our cabinet, it is east or northern kind of the Rapulas of this one. What does that say, State Council, to the rest of the country?
No, the message is very bad. You see, I think what we must guard against is the collective punishment of the people. The fact that Hakainde Hichilema, the main opposition leader in Zambia, has a lot of support from these areas does not mean you should collectively punish these people. Collective punishment of the people is wrong, whether you are talking about Palestine or you are talking about Zambia. You do not exact collective punishment of the people. Internationally, it's a practice that is frowned upon. But I think what is emerging is a trend that is worrying. Whenever you hear that there are appointments, nominations, and this is at board, parastatal board level, board CEO level, all arms of government, the names are very predictable. You know, whether it's the Bank of Zambia governor being fired, you can almost predict the province the replacement will come from. At any level, it's predictable, and that shouldn't be it. Zambia has invested a lot in training the manpower. We have qualified people from so many areas of this country. In fact, arguably, some of the first schools and advanced education started in Western Province, perhaps. not mistaken. And then you see, and they're qualified, there's qualified manpower everywhere in this country. So I think we must be equitable. And you see, there has to be a deliberate decision by our leaders to fight the temptation to be regional in the way things are managed. I have seen some people who have argued when I raised this issue, no, but the issue is that at that time, those are the people that are, you know, it's appointments on merit. We shouldn't look at regions or tribe, and we should only look at merit. No, I mean, the issue is not that those appointees are not qualified. They are probably qualified, okay?
Exactly.
But the question is, are they the only qualified people? Are you telling me that only people from these two regions are qualified for this period? All of a sudden, from independence to now, or to a few years ago, there were qualified people all over this country. And just in the past few years, very few years, we have all of a sudden had a deficit of qualifications in these areas, and
half
only two regions.
Half of the country.
Offering. Yes. Another argument that has been raised is that loyalty. The president is not sure of the loyalty of these people. That's simply not true. In any case, that argument being fostered by people who may be sympathizers of our ruling class is self-defeating. How can you, as a government or a ruling party, claim that the president cannot find even a few people in these areas? You are simply arguing that our president, who is my president as well, is not a national leader. You can't argue that. Because if you're arguing that the president has no loyal people in these areas, then you are basically saying that the president is not a national president. But every one of us, whether I come from Lusaka, or I come from Eastern Province, or I come from Western Province, or I come from Southern Province, President Edgar Lungu is my president. You see? So I think that is sending a very bad signal. And you see, again, unfortunately, if you have any people that are supporting the current status quo, you look at where they come from, it's these two regions again. The complaints are coming from people from the other regions.
Exactly.
And the majority of us are an intersection. Now, that shows you the divisions that are being breached.
Yes.
And this that I said is just an expression of the undercurrents that I'm hearing. And I've been hearing for some time. So we need to address the problem, and for the sake of the nation, but also our job is to publicly advise His Excellency the President where we may not have personal access to him. Because these things also, sometimes advisors and people close to the president create bubbles that create problems. And he needs to hear these issues so that we address the situation. But it's not okay to purge people from employment simply because of the regions or the names they come from. I am privileged to interact with a lot of people in government and areas, and some of these friends who we worked with or still interact with, we have knowledge that sometimes lists are sent and somewhere intercepted, and any name that sounds like it's from Central, from Southern, from Western, Northwestern is just removed. Just because the name sounds like it's from that area. That is unacceptable.
You are listening to Zambia Blog Talk Radio. My name is Roger Charlie here in Okotoks. Dr. Kasonso, welcome. Nathan, welcome. See, Nathan, if you can do a three-way back into the radio. That will probably be helpful. For full record, State Council, I come from Northwestern Province. And the sentiments back there, when people say, oh, there's no one here who can be in government, who can be loyal. But guess what? A lot of our minerals are on the table. So you tell the people there, you say, oh, we are not interested in you being on the table. We are just your resources. Those are the sentiments in the. Who are the forces? In that video, if you heard what that man said, he says it's the cheap politicians, those who have very little understanding of issues. Africa-wise, who are the forces responsible for this practice, States Council?
Yeah, I think what is helpful is to identify the problem.
I agree.
Identify the problem. The problem is that there is a vast number of people who are feeling excluded right now. And the sentiment is that the exclusion is deliberate and that it's being used for political purposes. And our job, the job of people like me who have been privileged to serve the government, the people of Zambia have given me the opportunity to serve them. You know, this state, Zambia, has educated me at great cost in years past when education was accessible. And I have a duty to help. It's more beneficial for me to keep quiet and have a bit of money in my back pocket, but what does it do to my conscience? So those of us who have the privilege of being able to articulate issues on behalf of others, we are highlighting this thing. And I think what we must not do is, I think it may not be helpful at this point if we want to resolve the problem, to point at who are the people, but we know that responsibility lies on the government. The government has a responsibility to be in the forefront of fostering national unity and national cohesion. And I think the government is already aware of its responsibility, because whenever we watch ZNBC TV, there is this reintroduction of this slogan, one Zambia, one nation before the years. Now we should not only sloganeer, we should put what we are saying into action. Yes. And give action to those words. And part of it is making sure that the appointments reflect a national character.
Yes.
It is not true that in Northwestern Province you cannot find Northwesterners who can't serve in government. It's just not true. You know, it's not true that there is no single Northwesterner who can be loyal to His Excellency, the President, or who can do work in the government in a loyal way and uphold the Constitution. That is the truth for Southern Province, it's true for Western Province, and it's true for Central Province, and any other province that insecure people may have a problem with appointments from. So I think it's just insecurity. And I think this insecurity of thinking that if a person has a name that is from a particular province, all of a sudden they'll start leaking information to the opposition or other people. It's just not true, you know. So,
continue on that.
Hopefully we can resolve it.
Yeah, continue on that trajectory just a little bit. When they say they may not be royal, do they understand the bigger problem they are creating? Because it's like they are trying to solve a small political problem, but they are forgetting that that comes at a greater cost if we continue at this rate we are going.
Hello, you are breaking there.
Okay. So I was.
Sorry, you have to say that again. I lost you.
Yes.
I lost you there.
Yeah, I'm beginning to have some small bubbles. I hope they don't continue. I was saying continue with that trajectory.
Hello?
Okay, so we're beginning to have internet issues. We were doing okay. I don't know what has happened.
Hello, I'd lost you there.
Okay, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah.
Hello?
Yes. So I was saying, State Council, they are trying to solve a small problem of royalty, as they claim. But what is the bigger problem they are creating by solving this small political problem?
Yeah. No, and that is true. I'm not even sure there is a problem. I'm not sure. You know, when you are concerned about leakages in government, I mean, leakages always happen. They happened even at the time. If they are wrong, they shouldn't happen, but they happened even at the time we're in government. The only cure is do the right thing. Obviously, if you are talking about national security, it's a different issue. But when you're talking about leakages, about corruption or these other wrongdoings, I mean, at the end of the day, the greatest cure to such kind of leakages is just not to engage in corruption. So loyalty is to the republic. Loyalty is to the state. And I don't think there is any serious argument that people from these areas cannot be loyal. No one can argue that seriously, in my view.
All right. Before I go to the next one, it is where you are making a very strong argument on tribal balancing. You're making a very, very strong argument there. Dr. Kasonso, good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you today?
Say hello to State Council MUSA MWENYA.
State Council MWENYA, welcome to the blog, and it's a pleasure to appropriate your wisdom and I perfectly understand your concerns, and we would like to just find where your heart sits on the national interest in your estimation and what is going on the ground. Yeah, so, you know, welcome again, and thank you for...
Do you have a question? I'll let you have a question for him before I continue.
State Council, in your estimation, let us assume that there is nobility in the notion of appointing only people from a particular region of Zambia. What message do you think they are trying to communicate to the other half that they think would serve the national interest?
I wouldn't even ascribe any sort of wisdom or method, strategy to it. I don't think there is any calculated strategy to send a message. And there certainly can never be any nobility in excluding any part of this country from the affairs of the nation. I think it is something that has crept up, and I think there has been a conspiracy of silence on all of our parts. We've just kept quiet, and people have been complaining silently. And I think now it's our job to alert our leaders that this is not okay, and that this is something that ought not to be continued. If there is a message that is being sent, it's certainly not a good one. To send a message to any part of this country that they are excluded from the management of the affairs of the nation is to make a very, very bad mistake, because it breeds discontentment, it breeds dissension, and it's a recipe for problems. We need Zambians to hold together. When we are paying ministers, when we are paying the PS, when we are paying the director in government, when we are funding the parastatal that has a board that only comes from 2 areas, we don't just tax those 2 areas. Every region of this country contributes to the national purse of this country. We are all taxed, and when we are being taxed, there is no discussion about where a person comes from, and I think that ought to stop now, and we must balance. There is no reason why this practice should continue. I would like to imagine that maybe it was done inadvertently up to now, by looking at people went to school with and so on. But I think now that we've alerted the authorities, now that we've raised this alarm, one would hope that we will see more balanced appointments. A deliberate move to seek out and look for other Zambians to participate in the management. And there are so many people. I remember in our time in government when we were looking for appointments, although there could have been complaints even then, what I noticed is people would be sought out. Yourself, Dr. Kasonso, could be called from where you are and say, but can you come back here? Are you able to help with this place? You seek out people, and that is the job of the technocrats in the government, advisors to the president, or even His Excellency the President himself can seek out one or two people who he thinks are capable, who are not from these two regions that are being seen as occupying a privileged position at the moment.
Well said. Like we said, this is a heavy lifting state council. We really need this. We really need this. Talk about national development when half of the country, as it seems today, feels left out. And I like your previous statement where you said you don't want to blame anyone. I think that was a very constructive or very helpful. Now, when we come to national development, when people feel left out, state council, what effect does that have?
Yeah. Now, with that, I think that issue of national development and people being disaffected, I think is across the country. It covers every region in this country, and I don't think the northerners or the easterners can claim to have received any more development than any other person. The complaint is simply with respect to the appointers and the appointing authority, and this must be made clear. It should never be an issue of targeting northerners or easterners. They have done nothing wrong. The issue here is about those who are appointing, are only appointing certain people. And I think as Zambians, we have to make that extremely clear, that when we raise the issue of appointments and the way they are going and our constitutional provisions, it should never ever be about attacking our brothers or seeing them as the ones benefiting. Because when you look at national development, you cannot claim that Northern Province has received any more development than other regions. It is not true that Luapula has received. In fact, I was in Luapula. Luapula doesn't even have industrial grade power, you see, because they can't even set up manganese processing plants in Luapula right now because Luapula doesn't have industrial grade power. You know, the same can be said of Muchinga. Muchinga, if you go to Chinsadi, the infrastructure is very insufficient. That is the same for Eastern Province as well. So these regions have not necessarily gotten any more development than any other place. The people in these regions have not gotten any more favors, the people on the ground. What is happening is it is the elite who are appointments are doing it in a way that is sending a very dangerous signal, and that we must deal with. Now, coming to the issue of development, the issue of development, in my view, we have had a huge problem, and I've always said this, I'll say it again, of corruption. And that is the issue that all of us from all regions have seen. It is something that I think when it comes to issues of corruption, whether it's by former leaders or current leaders, it's a problem that we have to address. Our national pace is very small. We had the FIC reporting that at one point did an analysis of their reports. In 3 years, we had corrupt transactions that went up to $800 million. This is a country whose reserves is about 1.1 billion.
Exactly.
You see? So now if you have those kind of leakages and then you want to build, even at a household level, you cannot build an economy or you cannot build your household first when you haven't first fixed the leakages. You haven't looked at your expenditure level on the expenditure side, stopped the excessive, wasteful, and unnecessary expenditure before you start building up your reserves. And that's our problem. How can our people in Northern Province, our people in Luapula, our people in Western, Northwestern or Southern access real development when instead of buying an ambulance at $50,000, we are buying the same ambulance at $288,000. And this is one ambulance, and our friends from Sweden embarrassed us as a country. Because after it was announced that these ambulances were bought at $288,000 by our government using a middleman, the Swedish government announced that they had donated the same spec of ambulance at $50,000. How can our nation develop and take development to these areas when we are buying fire tenders at $1 million a piece?
Okay.
And you're spending $42 million on fire tenders when we know that the total amount that was spent to bring them in is $3.5 million, and you even go an extra mile and waive taxes on those procurements. You know, and the list goes on and on and on.
And on and on.
Now we are dealing with honeybee.
Oh, that's it. That is, like I say, it is another kind of.
Yeah.
That's what I meant, State Council, when I said, is everything okay? Nathan, if you are able to come in, please come in. Our connections have been tricky. I thought State Council is our guinea pig. We are trying on him, but next time we'll be okay. I hope it comes, and you will. Go ahead, Nathan.
Yes, excellent. State Council MWENYA, it's good to have you on the show. I was telling my colleague here that we've been trying to get you to come on via Dr. Mulenga in South Africa. I'm glad it has worked out this time around. And
thank you.
We're good. Yeah, we're glad to have you. I have two questions for you. Number one, how do we create a balance on the argument of tribal balancing in a nation which has experienced intermarriages over the past, from the time we've been independent, if you wish to say so. We have people with Bemba names, with a combination of Lozi and the Bemba name. You have Bembas who have grown up in Western Province. You have Lozis who have grown up in Eastern Province, things like that, of that nature. So I may carry a Tonga name, and yet I'm not really pure Tonga, so to speak. I know everybody understands what I mean by that. How do we not exaggerate this argument of tribal balancing in a country with such a scenario? My second question is, I was listening to one of your video clips where you were arguing to say, rightly saying, civil servants need to account for the wealth that they accumulate, where somebody, you rightfully said, you need to explain how you've acquired a Range Rover when your income from your job as a civil servant doesn't agree with the assets that you have. Do you think that we probably need to consider making into law Dr. Kaunda's leadership code? Would that help? I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, let me start. Thank you so much. I'm assuming this is Pastor Nathan Kama.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's good to hear from you, sir. Now, Now, let me start with the issue of tribal balancing. What, in fact, perhaps when we use the word tribal balancing, we may even misrepresent it slightly. I think the correct way to look at it is regional balancing. The names, yes, there have been several intermarriages. I personally married, for lack of a better word, here in Zambia, we use the word Amkarat in inverted commas. I am from 2 regions, but my wife is from the north. She's a Mambwe from Bala. You see, so my kids are all sorts of quotas. Now, but that notwithstanding, these sentiments are still there. We should not, if we had intermarried enough, if we had gotten to a level where our regional and tribal identities have now completely disappeared, then we shouldn't have had the problem we have now. Because the fact of the matter is, you hear people in the ruling party saying that Southerners are tribal and that they only vote for people from their area, in inverted commas. You hear Southerners saying the North, the North is accusing the Northerners of saying someone has issued a statement that it's a no-go area for anyone from the South. I have seen myself ministers campaigning on tribal grounds, saying that no Tonga should come here and campaign and get a seat in the North. Those things are there on the ground. So the issue, I think, is to be honest enough to identify that the problem exists. And then we must resolve it. How do we resolve it? By being deliberate in sending the correct message. It's like affirmative action. You who are in the Western world there know that when the Western government saw that women, for example, are being sidelined, there was a deliberate policy to have women employment increased, and that was the affirmative action. You have affirmative action with the African Americans or even Africans in other, or black people in other countries. But what we have to have here is a decision to regionally balance all appointments. And fortunately, as recent as 2016, a constitution that was drafted and passed by the current government recognizes that issue. So it was recognized enough that it was actually enshrined in our constitution that that ought to be done. It is a current problem, which was actually, as recent as 2016, recognized by a constitutional enactment. So we must attend to it. So to shorten the answer is that we haven't intermarried enough to completely wipe out regional and tribal identities. They are still there. And the fact that there is actions that are being seen as skewed to some regions is causing problems, and we should resolve it.
Yeah.
Now, coming to the other issue you raised, I don't think we should have a leadership code. And the reason I say that is because it may work to discourage well-meaning business people from joining the government. Okay, those who have worked hard on their own and who have made money on their own and have skills. For example, some of you may be business people in the US there, UK, Canada, and anywhere else. And we say that would be a good Minister of Commerce. Can we ask you to come here and work for the time for your people? What a leadership code in the Kaunda style does is to discourage you from participating in. But however, if the leadership code we are going to coin answers to the modern needs now, then yes, we can go to that route. But the principle is simple. Everyone who has worked or works in government should not be afraid to account for their wealth. I have always said this. I was Solicitor General first. I became Attorney General. Why should I be afraid of being asked what I had before, what I acquired when I was in government, and how come I have what I have now? If I haven't stolen, if my wealth is not as a result of corruption, why should I be afraid? We have seen instant millionaires in this country who all of a sudden become business geniuses when they're in government. They have never run a single thing in their lives. They have never successfully done any business or even feathered themselves in a formal employment. But immediately they get into government, they become instant millionaires. And when they leave, poverty comes in a few years later. Now, how do you explain that? You know, how exactly do you explain the fact that you have that phenomenon? So the only explanation is that there is abuse of government officers. We are a poor country, which has slipped on the TIZ Corruption Perception Index, and we continue to go down. I'll tell you something, and a lot of people ask me this: what did you do yourselves when you were in government? How did you attend to it? I was requested by the late President Michael Sata, may his soul rest in peace, in 2011 to join his government. And one of the issues I discussed with him when I was being asked is that if I were to occupy a watchdog role like the one he had given me, then I should be given, me and my colleagues, free rein to fight corruption. And he told me that is exactly why I'm bringing you in, because you are strong enough to say no. I must say, I enjoyed working with him because he encouraged us to fight corruption. There was one or two instances when he misspoke and made people uncomfortable about what he said. And internally, we raised those issues. But generally, President Sata sent a consistent message about corruption. 2012, I was sworn in 2011, December. 2012, we enacted the Anti-Corruption Act, brought back the abuse of authority of office clause. 2013, you may be interested to know, we are the ones who operationalized the Financial Intelligence Center, FIC. We gave it funding, we made sure it was staffed, and that it started working.
Wonderful.
You know, we also made sure that when a minister was accused of financial impropriety and was actually prosecuted, they were fired. And we brought that to the president's attention. Unfortunately, he acted in accordance to the advice he was given. And we saw a lot of that. Ronald Chitetela was fired. Rogers Mwerwa, the late, may his soul rest in peace, was fired. There was even a young permanent secretary who had a big party with fireworks and so on. I think she had it on a Saturday. By Tuesday, she was asked to go and enjoy her wealth because we are saving poor people. You can't be showing so much wealth, and if you have so much money, go and enjoy it. So I think the message was strong, it was consistent, and because of that, in 2012, we scored the highest corruption perception rose to 37, and in 2013 and 2014, we hit that record. Our 38, and I think that is something that made me and my colleagues quite proud. So I still reiterate the fact that we must account for our wealth. That's the only way to fight. People should know that when they leave power or when they leave office, or even as they are in office, they'll be asked questions as to how they are driving expenses, living in mansions and having a lifestyle where sending families all over the world for medical treatment, complete with bodyguards paid for and so on. Where is this money coming from? In a country where people exchange, some people eat today at lunchtime, others eat supper tomorrow in the same household. You can't eat all the meals the same day. We have problems that we must resolve. And every dollar, every kwacha must be saved from going into people's pockets.
Well said. We'll spend the last 10 minutes being hopeful State Council here. I've always told my friends I grew up in Kitwe, where actually back in the day, State Council, when I was growing up, I thought people from Malawi was a city in Zambia, because there were so many of them in Mindoro. To my left, south we are from Tanzania, north Vanakabungo, everywhere, and we lived well. Question: how do we begin to have a wonderful discussion where you hear Tonga, it's not a toxic thing you are hearing. If you hear Bemba, it's not a toxic. We begin to celebrate ourselves. How do we lift ourselves at this stage, State Council?
No, I think, you see, our people have no problem.
Mm-hmm.
At the local level, at the domestic level, we have no problem with each other. And I tell people, why is it that in love, we don't have these problems? When I saw my wife, I didn't ask, which region do you come from?
My wife is from Luapula, by the way.
Exactly. I just saw this woman, I said, she's beautiful. That is something that looks appealing to me. Yeah. I probably knew about Mbala and everything 4 months after we had started talking.
Yeah.
Now, if in love we don't talk about this, why is it that we are talking about it in politics? And the only answer is that this is a politically motivated issue. It's not an issue of our people. It is being funded by people who want to benefit politically by dividing us. And that's why those of us who are well-meaning must sound the alarm so that those who are funding it know that we know and we're not interested to participate in this machination that just divide us, you know? Yeah. So at the end of the day, I don't think even now when you go in the communities, you don't see this. But those in authority and sometimes in government offices fund this kind of divisions. I'll tell you a story. I have a close friend of mine. He is Tonga, and we went to school together. He met me one day and he says, look, I'm very sad about what is happening. So I asked, what was the problem? He says, my auntie, who is an old woman from the village, came to visit for a funeral, and in the funeral, someone stole something from her. So we went, I got her into my car, and we went to a nearby police station to report this issue. Now, because she's an old Tonga woman from the village, she could only speak Tonga coherently. So she was talking to me in Tonga, and I was interpreting it to the police officer. And this police officer had the guile to say, not if you're Fitundomuno. How? How does an officer of the state talk like that? You know, and it's only the people who occupy some of these, and I don't think that is even a proper police officer, because our police are very professional. Most of our police officers, if you recall, in the olden days, when they even speak, they would speak with a somewhat Lilai Tonga accent, if you remember, or even Aussie accent.
Yes.
So our police officers are not that intolerant. These are the new people who may have been infused, who don't even have proper training. But this is something that is being now trying to be pushed down by people who don't know any better. It is not us. As Zambians, we are not that kind of way. And locally, we don't even know these issues. So that's why well-meaning people like yourself and myself should highlight these issues, not because we have any ill will against our leaders. We do it out of love. It is a warning. It is the advice that, look, when you appoint people, don't tell them that we are disunited when we are in fact not disunited. You know, we are united people. At local level, we are cohesive. But the more that our leaders fan these flames, the more the disunity will come.
Exactly.
And we must now so that it doesn't crop in.
Wow. Wow. Lastly, I took this from your Facebook article 259. Subsection 2 of our constitution requires regional balancing in appointments and nomination. There is a good reason, you said, for this. Is there a legal recourse, State Council, to this problem?
Yes, there is legal recourse. There is actions that people who feel they may have been discriminated against can take to enforce those articles. But even before we get there to legal recourse, we must hope that our leaders will see that this is not necessarily a legal issue.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is a national issue that should be attacked from a national point, because you know the problem with law, you have winners and losers. We can't have that in this debate.
No.
You know, it is a question about
I like that.
all of us winning, you know, and hoping that we can convince those who are listening that this is the right way to go. There is no need for any of these kind of things, because we have seen it. We look at board appointments, they seem to be one way. We look at any appointment, you can almost predict when someone is fired, the replacement, you can tell where they're coming from. You know, and I think that even the people who are being appointed, some of our brothers who we have spoken to, they understand that this is a problem. I have had a lot of discussions with friends who are from the East. I have had a lot of discussions from friends in the northern region. They also know that this is not proper, because it doesn't serve any of us, you know, because we are one Zambia, we are one nation, and we are one people. We've always been.
We've always been one people. State Council, I'm not sure how to thank you if I speak in my, is it Kopala language? I'm not sure how to thank you, but we are very, very grateful. And we, like you have rightly said, some of us who are well informed, we should continue to push this issue because going along with it, it is a dangerous practice to have. Thank you, State Council, for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and all the very best. Cheers.
Thank you. So, Nathan, there you are. I hope you got something there. You are convinced. He's challenging us that we who what did you say? What did you say? We who are
well-meaning,
we should take a lead into this thing as we transition to Anaka's. Go ahead, Nathan.
Yes, it's important because you see that's why I even raised the issue of what's the word? Okay, before I get to my point there, I like what he